Hi everyone. I I thought I would make 1 or 2 points about the Pretoria Agreement because now there's talk of a new forum to be organized by the African Union, and the purpose of the forum, according to a press release from the United States government and also a tweet from the Tigray president, is that they're going to assess the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. To remind maybe some of you who might have been plugged into developments in Ethiopia, although I hardly doubt there is any such person. The Pretoria Agreement was signed between the Ethiopian regime and the Tigray People's Liberation Front in 2022, in November of 2022. With the agreement that ended the war on Tigray. The war on Tigray, again, as most of you will remember, is one that had killed more than 500,000 Tigrayans. That's a conservative estimate. It's one that has comprehensively destroyed Tigray. I was in Tigray a couple of months ago, so I have seen everything with my own eyes, and the level of destruction is beyond what could describe, and everything that could be described as a civilian infrastructure has been thoroughly destroyed. Factories and schools and hospitals and other civilian installations have been completely wiped out by Eritreans, and you you couldn't find even a single individual in Tigray who hasn't lost a close relative in the war. And when I say lost, not due to natural causes, but killed, either by Ethiopian forces or by Eritrean forces. So the level of destruction that Ethiopian and Eritreans caused in Tigray is beyond comprehension. But anyway, that was the war, and it ended, at least the conventional war ended with the signing of the agreement, although, again, the war continues in a lot of other forms. But that is not for today. I'm not here to talk about the destruction that the war has caused. But I just want to say a few things about the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. Now, again, a reminder about the essence of the Pretoria Agreement. It had, or still active, a lot of provisions and clauses. So two of the main, I think, in my opinion, main clauses. One regarding the issue of what the agreement calls contested areas, and the other regarding the issue of foreign forces in Tigray. So I will say a few words about each of these two provisions of the agreement. Again, there are a lot of other clauses, but for now they're not really relevant. In terms of what the agreement calls contested area, that is a reference to Western Tigray and parts of Western Tigray. During the signing of the agreement, the entirety of Western Tigray was occupied by combination of Amhara forces, Eritrean forces, and Ethiopian forces. And the agreement says that Eritrean and Amhara forces, although the technical word they use in the agreement is non-END forces, because they didn't want to anger Eritrea, so they didn't mention Eritrea by name. But it was obvious that it was in reference to Eritrea and Amhara that they wrote in the agreement that non-END forces would withdraw from Tigray concurrently with the disarmament of the Tigrayan forces. Now, how exactly the word concurrently was to be interpreted, the agreement doesn't say. But again, the understanding or the perception among people was that 1.5 years down the line, and that is how much time has elapsed since the signing of the agreement, Eritrean forces would have left and Amhara forces would have left Tigray. That was the understanding. Again, there was a timeline in the agreement. There was a timeline of when the clauses of the agreement would be delivered. But today, the 7th of March 2024, 1.5 years after the signing of the agreement, Eritrean forces continue to occupy parts of Western Tigray, huge parts of Eastern Tigray, and Amhara forces continue to occupy Western Tigray. Ethnic Tigrayans have been completely driven out of Western Tigray. A lot of Tigrayans have been killed, and the very individual that the United States, the American government, has accused of executing the ethnic cleansing, is in charge of ruling Western Tigray now. So that is the state of affairs regarding the occupation of Western Tigray by non-ANDF forces. Amhara forces and Eritrean forces continue to stay where they were when the agreement was signed. So nothing had changed in that respect. So I think it's important to take stock of matters and to remind ourselves that nothing had changed despite the agreement promising that Eritrean and Amhara forces would leave Western Tigray. That hasn't happened. So that is where we are in terms of the supposed withdrawal of foreign forces. And about contested areas, again, the agreement or the clause pertaining to the so-called contested areas. Now, I say so-called because there is no reason why Western Tigray should be contested. There is no historical basis. There is no political basis. There is no constitutional basis. There is no demographic basis that should be contested. This is a land. This is a people that have always been Tigrayan by every any account. And again, those of you who might want to read on these matters, you could read articles on tighat.com on our website. We have published a lot of articles about Western Tigray, and there is absolutely no basis for the Amharas to lay any claim on Western Tigray and or Southern Tigray. But that notwithstanding, I think we could leave that discussion to another time. The agreement says that the issue was going to be resolved following the constitution of Ethiopia, and the constitution stipulates a very specific way of resolving these matters, but that hasn't happened. Now, the Western Tigray is, for all intents and purposes, under Amhara rule. Like I said, the zonal administrator, if you could call it that, is the very individual who committed the ethnic cleansing and who is accused of a lot of other heinous crimes. Again, you could read on the crimes that have been levied against him I think by Amnesty International, by the UN's report by the UN's investigation into crimes committed in Tigray, and by Ethiopian government's own Human Rights Commission as well. So this is a deeply repellent individual who has committed unspeakable crimes against Tigrayans, who are still in charge of Western Tigray. So that is the state of affairs in terms of the contested areas. No attempt has been made to resolve the conflict, because if an attempt has been made, the way is very straightforward. The lands should have been returned to the administration of Western Tigray, because that's what the constitution, again, if you are following constitutional mechanism, that the Western Tigray and Southern Tigray should have been returned to Western Tigray. And if the people who have issues, who want to hold referendum to decide whether they belong in Tigray or in Amhara, or who have identity-related issues, because that's also one of the ways in which the problem is framed. The Amhara say that there are people in Western Tigray who are ethnic Amharas, and therefore that they have been forced to acquire Tigrayan identity. Now, if there are, again, this is a completely manufactured problem. I don't believe that there are such people in Western Tigray. But if there is a constitutional way for these people to raise their grievances and to pursue a solution. So that hasn't been done. And on the contrary, the Ethiopian government has now invented a completely fake solution. And the solution by the Ethiopian regime is that the Western Tigray would be administered under federal administration, and that Tigray, again, the Tigrayan who used to live in Western Tigray, so hundreds of thousands of them who have been driven out of Western Tigray and who are now living in concentration camps inside Tigray, would return to Western Tigray when Western Tigray is under the rule of the very individual who had driven them out in the first place. So that is the solution of the Ethiopian regime, because the Ethiopian regime doesn't want to do the right thing and return Western Tigray to where it belongs. And there hasn't been any pressure on the part of the interim administration of Tigray. And there hasn't been any pressure on the part of the international community for the Ethiopian government to honor the terms of the Pretoria Agreement in good faith. So I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is that, of course, it's good that the African Union and the American government and the Ethiopian regime and the Tigray People's Liberation Front of the interim administration are now going to hold a forum, and they're going to take stock of events and matters, and they are going to do evaluation of what has been implemented and what hasn't been implemented. But actually, you don't need to hold a forum to understand what hasn't been implemented. Everybody knows what hasn't been implemented. Everybody knows that Eritrean and Amhara forces continue to occupy the territories that they occupied when the agreement was signed. Everybody knows that the Ethiopian regime hasn't made even an attempt to try to resolve the conflict. And everybody knows what needs to be done if there is a genuine desire on the part of the international community and the Ethiopian regime to resolve the conflict. Well, I say conflict, but the provisions of the Pretoria Agreement. And now that is without going into the other issues, into the issue of justice, into the issue of restitution to victims of war in Tigray. That is for another day. But in terms of the two main issues of the agreement, no attempt whatsoever has been made by any party or by any stakeholder. So again, I'm not against the forum, but there is no need to hold or organize a forum to conduct assessment of what has been done and what hasn't been done in terms of the Pretoria Agreement. Everybody knows what needs to be done. So I just thought to make that point, because if you just if you rely on the press release, on the propaganda from the Ethiopian regime and all that, you would think that an attempt has been made. You would think that the issue of Western Tigray has been resolved, and you would think that a lot of the clauses of the agreement have been put in place, have been implemented, and that all that remains is some minor details. But that is not the case. The main provisions, the critical aspect of the agreement haven't been implemented. Not only have they not been implemented, the regime, the Ethiopian regime, hasn't even pretended to care. So my message again to the people who are trying to hold the forum, the African Union, the American government, would be that they should be honest and they should admit that they have failed the Tigray people. They should be honest that they have failed the Tigray people in IDP centers now in Tigray, and that the one thing that they should try to do is to redeem themselves by trying to do the right thing, and by pushing for Eritrean and Amhara forces to leave the areas of Tigray that they continue to occupy, and to return the people in IDP centers to their homes. The idea that the Ethiopian government is trying to fool the international community into believing that it will return IDP centers when the places where they will return to under the occupation of the very forces who drove them out in the first place is so grotesque, and that the Ethiopian regime should be called out for that, and that is what they should do now instead of holding meaningless forums and all that. So I thought I would make that point because it's easy to forget what has been implemented and hasn't been implemented in the midst of all the barrage of life that we get from every corner. So that was that, and bye bye.